Chapter 13. The Duchess. Gauntlet. Welcome back! After so long, my twisted little family. I have returned to bring you yet another chapter of madness. In case you need a refresher, and I'm sure you do. Last we left everyone, we had just been introduced to a beautifully nasty Duchess, sister to the Queen of Hearts and ruler of the swamplands of Wonderland. David agrees to a challenge at the promise of help from this new friend. And this is where we pick up our story. The Duchess has brought forth a challenge known as the Gauntlet. And if anything else in this world is to be believed, then the Duchess's promise that nothing will be harder than this is most certainly true. Let us dive in and see what awaits our lovely little David.
This stupid, naive fool. He has no idea what he's doing. Does he really think he'll survive? Oh, I'll bet you, when he hears the challenge, he will surely run. He'll scramble off into the marsh forest and be devoured by the wild alligator anglers. Very well, boy. You shall participate in my greatest challenge.
The Duchess clapped her hands together 5 times, and the ground began to shake tremendously. David began to worry. The Duchess merely laughed, and as she did, an enormous arena began to form around the three. The Queen of Hearts rolled her eyes.
Not this again,
she said, annoyed. David watched as the two sisters were carried atop a magnificent-looking arena platform. Around him, various cages were forming, all shaking violently from the monsters held within them. There were 8 total, all different sizes and shapes, yet all stood towering over David nonetheless. The Duchess cleared her throat and said in a most authoritative voice,
Citizens of the marsh forest, dwellers of the fire igloos of freezing heat, and you, the land-breathing fish of the sea.
What?
We have gathered here today at the proposal of my dear sweet sister to see if yet another brave, or perhaps foolish, soul can survive our kingdom's most arduous, soul-crushing, tedious, heart-pounding challenge.
All around him, the citizens began to pound their fists against their seats and chant, "Gauntlet! Gauntlet! Gauntlet!" They chanted as if preparing for a great battle. The Duchess held her ear to the crowd as if she were hard of hearing.
I cannot bloody hear you, wonderful bastards! What do you want?
She bellowed in a voice that disturbed David. It was Duchess, but there was something else in there. Something darker. The citizens screamed louder in response, making the ground shake once again around David.
Then let us introduce our newest champion to his first challenge. Bring out the Blogstonert.
Well, with a name like that, it can't be that threatening, right?
The first cage was pyramid-shaped, with bars that looked to be made of ice. And then David began to hear the sound of something smoldering, and the ring around him began to glow an alarming shade of red. Heat soon followed, blistering heat. David found it hard to stay in one spot for too long as he began to burn his feet to do so. David had expected an enormous beast from the size of the cage that contained it, only to be surprised when, from out of one of the tiny triangle-shaped bars, crawled what looked to be a bunny. A normal, plain old bunny, with the exception of the extra pair of eyes the thing had on top of its head. It also appeared to have very sharp fangs, even vampire-like in appearance. But aside from that, the only noticeable difference were the various symbols seemingly painted in strange spots around its body. When it blinked, its eyelids closed the wrong way, making its gaze unnerving to look at. Its nose flared, and from it rose two small smokestacks. David's calm demeanor dropped then, as he understood what he was up against. The creature confirmed his suspicion by turning around, taking in a massive breath, and releasing a stream of fire upon the ice skate, vaporizing it instantly. After this, it burped up a cloud of purple smoke in a high-pitched squeal.
Well then, that certainly does complicate things now, doesn't it?
Haha, David. Even in the face of certain demise, still time for a wisecrack. Unfortunately for you, this is no laughing matter. It began to gracefully hop towards him, blinking its multiple eyes in sequence each time. David began to look around for something, anything, to combat the monster, but his eyes only fell on a large stone with a sharpened edge. David noticed the animal had all but closed the distance between the two of them and was currently taking another fiery breath into its tiny lungs. As it released its inferno, David rolled to the right, feeling the flames singe at his sleeve as he did. Suddenly, the creature grew. Not by much, but enough for it to have been noticeable. Its hair had become slightly matted and dirtier. Rather than turn to look at David, it would use its far right eyeball to rotate around its head to look at the boy. The eye circled around the flesh of the creature's head as it moved, and it began to glow red upon finding its target. The creature jumped around to face him not 3 seconds later. The speed of the thing had almost certainly increased as well. There was no doubt about that now. As it was inhaling another fire breath, David had an idea. If he could somehow blind the creature, he may be able to buy himself enough time to formulate an actual attack plan. His fire-breathing adversary released his fireball, and it went crashing into the wall of the arena, knocking many stones loose from the masonry as it did. David had barely dodged that one, and another burn could be felt on his right arm. The Blocksternert grew in size again, this time growing to the size of a fully grown horse. The animal's fur was extremely tattered, mangy, and tangled. By this time, David had reached the large stone, but the creature had already prepared another fire blast by that time, and began to fire at the boy. Black and purple smoke billowed from the thing's mouth at a near constant rate now, clouding the arena ceiling in a thick mist of black. As the thing searched for him through the smoke, David chucked a handful of ash and dirt straight into the thing's searching eye, eliciting a howl of pain. David took this opportunity and jumped as hard as he could imagine, getting himself a surprising distance off the ground and onto the creature's back. Using the shifting eye as an anchor point, David brought the stone down into the beast's flesh, earning a vicious roar of pain, as David grabbed 2 tufts of hair on the thing's head and pulled with all his might. Just as he thought, this made the creature wind up another blast of fire, and seeing the 2 buffoons seated atop their immaculate chairs so far up into the air, David yanked the thing's head up as hard as he could, and the thing fired a dazzling purple fireball right at the Queen and Duchess.
Enough!
The Duchess held out her hand, and instantly the fireball redirected into the crowd of onlookers, killing 50 people instantly. The crowd roared with more and more excitement at this display, however, chanting for more blood, more death, more chaos.
Very good, David. You have completed the first challenge. But do not expect the others to be so simple. Bring in the Skullbra.
Suddenly, the arena lost all lights, and giant walls began to encase David in a maze-like structure. The chanting of the crowd died now, and David could only hear a new sound. Hissing. David had thought the sisters silent, but in fact, they were having a conversation all their own in their heads.
Do you really think he'll survive this?
Yes. Indeed, yes, this is the one. Yes, this is the one we have been waiting for. If he can complete my gauntlet, that is.
Oh, please, sister. I could beat your silly little trials with my hand tied behind my back.
David heard the hissing intensify, and he knew what was to come.
Snakes and spiders. Why did it have to be snakes and spiders?
The Skullbra was by far the most grotesque thing the Duchess had ever captured. Plucking it straight from the nearby swamp with her poison-resistant skin, the thing was horrifying. It had 6 beady eyes, all of which glowed a bright orange. The body of an enormous arachnid, with a retractable and extendable neck, like that of a snake. It spun its head around 360 degrees, and let out a long, venom-filled that reverberated around the entire arena. It opened its mouth and spat forth a black, tar-like substance which dissolved the wall next to David upon impact. It moved like a spider, yet with the striking speed of a deadly viper. He began to look for a way out, and to his right he saw a branching path, so he ran for it, until the very maze walls around him began to shift. He could hear the disgusting sound of the thing carrying itself on its 8 spindly legs throughout the maze, at one point turning back and seeing a large hourglass-shaped mark on the thing's abdomen, reminding David of the Black Widows he had encountered back home. This only spurred him on even faster, knowing how deadly his foe really was. Finally, the thing had cornered him, and he slid under it to escape, in the process hitting the red marking on the spider's abdomen and causing the creature immense pain by doing so. In response to its pain, however, the Skullbra doubled its efforts to kill the boy, charging at high speed but falling every time. David quickly dodged left as the thing struck right. Finally, it spit another stream of webbing at him, hitting him in the right arm, only this webbing was special. As soon as it made contact with skin, it grew like a living vine, beginning to encase the boy, and the Skullbra knew this, and charged forward. David was barely able to escape the webbing in time to move, but this near defeat had also just provided him the answer to his victory. He allowed the thing to shoot 5 more webs, all of them eventually meeting in the middle, and creating a pathway all the way to the top of the arena. David then threw a stone at the thing once he had climbed to the top, to attract the spider. And it took David's bait, following him all the way to the top, before David cleverly and quickly severed the web that the Skullbra had been hanging from, sending the creature tumbling, kicking, and screeching all the way to the ground, where a loud thud could be heard. The creature had landed directly on the red ulcer-like appendage on its abdomen, and its guts were now decorating the arena floor. David stood tall and proud. The Skullbra had been defeated!
Well then, I have defeated your monstrosity. What now, you wicked witch?
Witch?
You miserable, disgusting, lowly piece of mortal impurity! Face the wrath of Wonderland! Bring forth the ancient underdweller!
At the words of the Duchess, the maze was gone, and the arena floor quickly dissolved into a body of murky black water. David struggled to catch his breath as the two sisters watched on and laughed.
Maybe that will teach you to run your mouth, impudent child.
David was then lifted into the air on a raised platform, and looked around to see more floating platforms. He guessed they must be at least 50 feet above the ground. The entire arena floor had turned into the black water, and though it was dark, something darker still had just made its presence known to him. He could see its gigantic shadow waiting in the water below. It brought its head to the surface of the water, and then he could see it. The vaguely humanoid form had yellow eyes, long green hair, and nails that were so long they extended out of the water and up towards the platform that David currently stood on. It smiled at him, which in itself was terrifying, because as of now, none of these creatures had displayed anything so human. But now, for one to not only do this, but to acknowledge his presence with more than just a psychotic rampage, it terrified him, frankly. This is the Quanubalik, the ancient underdweller. She opened her fang-filled mouth and spoke with her gangly arms outstretched for an embrace.
Oh, little one, small and scared, come to me in my caves which I led, with kitties and biddies who once dared to run from home as one obeying impaired. If you're going to beg, please just save it. Nothing will keep me from you, dear David.
Well, well, well. I certainly do wonder what could happen next. We'll simply have to find out. Next time on Madness in Wonderland. Chapter 14. To please a queen.